Welcome back. A report released just last November by the UK-based Overseas Development Institute says that almost 40% of sub-Saharan African countries are in danger of slipping into a major debt crisis. Let's now look at these issues a little further. I'm now being joined on the news at 10 to discuss this by the Vice President of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa. I want to thank you so much indeed for joining us on the news at 10. Let's begin by looking at this, it seems to be a huge concern for a lot of people, but the federal government is giving the impression that there is nothing to worry about regarding the issue of debt. Do you share the same views with this line of thought by the government?
I think the government is saying so from the background that our debt position relative to GDP is not much to worry about at this time.
Okay, it's not something to worry about.
Yes.
So what would you say is the fueling factor in this case, since we're having this, it's about the highest we've had in the history of this country, and it's not a source of concern?
Yes, essentially what the government has been doing is to budget significantly based on debt rather than revenue. The revenue part of the budget is always less than 30–40%. So a lot of the budget is predicated on borrowing. So long as you keep borrowing, you're going to have your debt profile going higher and higher. So that's essentially translates into having to borrow a lot more than you would otherwise borrow if your revenues were high enough to meet your budget as you plan them.
Okay, now this is what we have. Nigeria's total public debt climbed to $79.437 billion. That's the equivalent of 24.38 trillion naira as at December 31st, 2018. According to the Debt Management Office, the DMO said that in its public debt profile report released on Thursday, representing a 12.25%. What are the ups and downs and the sides of this equation if we have to look at the development and how the country will progress?
Generally, the international benchmark for debt to equity that is a matter for concern is about 40%. If you are less than 40%, you probably have a lot of room to borrow. But that assumes that you are able to repay the debts comfortably. So the concern for Nigeria is not so much the fact that the debt to equity ratio is quite high, but the fact that we do not generate enough revenue to be able to meet the payment obligations of those debts. And that's why the government is saying that they have a lot of room to borrow. But that presumes that you are also generating enough revenue to meet the repayments significantly.
So now the DMO has also just come up with these two new bond issues in April 2029. That's a 10-year bond. And also April 2049, a 30-year bond, which is likely to shore up this debt profile further. But does the country have the capacity to redeem these debts at all?
Well, so long as we are able to continue to maintain the level of revenues that we have now, our capacity to pay will be going down. We have to significantly increase the level of revenue. The revenue generation has to grow much faster than what we are seeing now. Otherwise, we get to a situation where we will have challenges paying the debts alone, let alone getting revenue to finance our regular obligations like salaries and recurrent expenses. That is where the challenge really is.
What about infrastructure, for instance? If you look at the infrastructure deficit that we have in the country and the promises of this government to improve on that, side by side looking at the debt profile, what can you tell us?
Well, the government has never been able to really finance infrastructure from the budget. We have never been able to do that. That's why you find a lot of projects are not being financed, because the budget does not have the capacity to meet those infrastructure capital projects. We are either had to borrow to finance them, or we look to public-private partnerships. So expecting that we'll be able to finance significant infrastructure from the budget was something that was not sustainable. There was no basis for expecting it to happen, because the size of infrastructure deficit we have is far beyond what our annual budgets can expect to meet. We really were looking at private-public partnerships significantly to address infrastructure deficits, not the annual budgets. So you find a lot of the infrastructure projects are just undone because it was never going to be done if you were going to finance them from the Treasury. The Treasury just don't have that capacity to do that.
I do sincerely appreciate your enlightening us and giving us some of those very difficult answers to those questions. The Vice President of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, thank you so much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you.
More stories now. Although the present administration in Ogun State has less than 2 months in office, the government is promising that all legacy projects, especially those tagged legacy projects, will be completed latest in May. This is just as beneficiaries of one of such projects, particularly residents of Itoku in Abeokuta, the state capital, are commending the state government for fulfilling its promise to upgrade their road.
This is Itoku in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital, popularly known for its Adire fabric and the entrance to Olumo Rock. This is what the road looked like for years, a situation residents say has brought untold hardship on them.
You know, she in the 54 years. So,
but that challenge may no longer be, as the state government is stepping in to ease the gridlock with the construction of this 6-lane road stretching about 3 kilometers.
This place will be 2 in 1, really. You have the mall here, and you have this road, a very significant road, the road that leads to Olumo from Itoku. Nobody could believe that this road could be done. We thank God that today this is coming to fruition. We promise that it will be done, and to the glory of God, it's almost happening. If you look at the percentage of completion, you will notice that indeed, probably within the next maybe 2 weeks or so, or maximum of a month, this will have been completed.
The residents are not just heaving a sigh of relief as a result of this intervention. They say it is already changing the outlook of the area, even before completion.
Since we are born at this age now, Abeokuta is not like this. It's like village. When our government come now, you see everything that change. Even you can say we are now in small London. You can say we are in small London because nothing happened like this. Because there's nothing good like this for. Everything was no bridge, no anything. But now there's bridge, there are overhead bridge, flying over everything. So enjoy it.
The asphalting has begun and is promised to be completed latest by May, when President Muhammadu Buhari will be visiting to commission it alongside other projects across the state.
Students of the Taraba State University in Jalingo have made a passionate appeal to the state government to address the plight of lecturers in the institution who have embarked on an industrial action. Some of the students who spoke to Channels Television said it is not up to a month since they resumed academic activities in the institution following the nationwide strike and 2019 general elections. They say that the new industrial action by their teachers will affect their academic performances.
Teachers are on industrial action that was earlier suspended. A few of the students are rather busy doing their own thing, dancing or attempting to take in some knowledge. The few that spoke with us are concerned about the impact of this strike on their academics.
It really affects my life, let me say, and as well as the entire studies I'm into now, because strike is not something that a student will welcome it, whether directly or indirectly.
Many students just resumed not quite long ago, and some of them are from different states, they spend transport to come down here, and all of a sudden strike.
Others want a quick intervention from the government.
We are pleading to the government to please look into this critical matter.
They should do something. They should settle our staff, our lecturers, so that they should come back and teach the students very well.
The business community is not left out of this pleading.
This is where I get everything to feed my family. So we are appealing to the government to look into the situation, whatever is the problem, let them come to terms with the lecturers and let our students come back.
In 2018, the Taraba State University chapter of the Academic Staff Union of Universities embarked on an indefinite strike, but suspended it when the state government promised to meet its demands, which included the payment of earned academic allowances from 2014 till date, the provision of required infrastructure to enhance teaching and learning, fencing of the institution, among several others.
You're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, reaching you live from Lagos. Let's quickly shift our gears now to business news with Kayode Okikiolu.
Government strategizes to boost revenues in 2019. The head of research at FSDH Group, Mr. Ayodele Akiomi, is of the view that the informal sector remains the biggest money spinner to harness. The economist bases his argument on the findings of the International Monetary Fund that says Nigeria's informal economy accounts for 65% of the gross domestic product.
Getting tax from that informal sector is difficult, and so government is losing revenue to having large informal sector. What can you do? And of course, all the regulators in the financial industries are going about and saying, let's increase financial inclusion, let's bank the unbanked, let's use technology. As you do that, you bring them to the formal sector and you will be able to capture them. And we have also said, and so you can then grow your oil revenue that will now give you the room to build your local capacity to generate revenue, to create employment, such that you don't just leave your economy's revenue to the movement in oil price.
And the stock market continued its decline for the fourth consecutive week in a row as its all-share index fell 4.59% week on week. The equity capitalization lost 548 billion naira this week. And this was driven by bearish sentiment across all sectors, with the consumer goods sector dipping the most by 7.73%. Losses in CCNN, Dangote Cement and Better Glass led to a 6.68% fall in the industrial goods segment, followed by the banking stocks and other divisions. Eterna PLC lost the highest by 24.5%, while Iketa Hotels gained the most by 20.21%. Over 3.544 billion units of shares worth 20.264 billion naira was traded this week in 19,130 deals. More business stories. World Bank's new president, Mr. David Malpass, is to commence his 5-year term on April the 9th, 2019. In a statement, Mr. Malpass was unanimously selected as the new president of the World Bank on Friday through the 2011 selection process. The process includes an open, transparent nomination where any member of the bank's membership could be nominated by an executive director. Until his appointment, Mr. Malpass served as the Undersecretary of Treasury for the International Affairs of United States of America. And that's business news for tonight. Thank you for watching. I am Kayode Okikiolu. The news at 10 continues with Kimba.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Manchester City stays on course for the quadruple after beating Brighton to reach the FA Cup final. Stay with us.